Hi, everybody. I see we have Wisteria is here, and I believe Miles is here. Um, and we are having a special quarantine time this summer because we had a really cool opportunity present itself. So I'm going to share my screen just briefly and just go over a couple of items. So today we're going to be talking about become a FIRST Robotics Ambassador, but I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that on Wednesday we have the next in our Summer of Science series. We are having a virtual science cafe on not just neurons, the brain's other cells. And so you can go register at the website that you see listed on the screen. So for those of you that are joining us today, if you could just do a quick introduction in the chat box. You find the chat. You have a menu at the bottom of your screen. Open up your chat box. And if you just type in your first name, let us know your name and where you are coming from. Because I know our presenters today are going to be really curious about where you're coming from, as well as maybe what school you go to, because I think that could be important. So we have Miles from Amherst, and then Miles, I believe that's Amherst, Mass. And then we have Kim here from Rutland, one of our presenters, fantastic. I'm Lauren Traster. For those of you who don't know me, I am the 4-H Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator here with UVM Extension, and I am coming from Hyde Park today. Yes, Miles from Amherst, Mass, welcome. So for those of you just joining us, if you could just let us know who you are, that'd be great, where you're from, and perhaps the school that you go to. So just want to remind everyone, when we are here in Zoom, we have some protocols for these virtual gatherings. We like it that you stay muted unless you request to speak if you have a question. There's 2 ways to share your thoughts or ask a question. One is using the chat box. You can definitely put your ideas there, ask a question there. We'll make sure that our presenters see it and are able to answer your question. But you also, if you open up the participant list, you'll see next to your name, you have an option to raise your hand. And if you click on that, we'll unmute you and let you ask your question. So there's those 2 different ways that you can engage today. We're a small group today, so it'd be awesome if people do take the option to raise your hand and ask your questions. But we do ask that you be courteous and respectful while we're here in Zoom land today. Don't create any distractions. So if your video is on, please don't make any silly faces. Make sure there's nothing inappropriate in your background. We do ask that you use the chat box appropriately. It's to stay on topic. It's not to have side conversations or anything off topic. It's your choice if you want to have your video on. We are recording this session because we're going to be using this as we try to recruit other teams around the state. So again, your choice if you want to have the video on. And we ask that you just stay engaged and participate fully today. So as I mentioned, our topic today is become a FIRST Robotics Ambassador. And this is a program that is being sponsored by UVM College of Engineering, Math, and Sciences and the Generator Space, as well as UVM Extension 4-H. I'm going to unshare my screen and introduce to you the 4-H educator, Kimberly Griffin, who is the 4-H person on this project, and she'll introduce the rest of the team today. So welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Kimberly Griffin. I live in Rutland, and I cover Rutland and Bennington counties, but for this project, I get to go statewide and work on STEM and robotics with you all and with some other folks. So joining me today are Mike Cole and John Cohn. And what I'm gonna do is share my screen, and Diane, hi Diane. I'm gonna share my screen, and so we're gonna tag team this, because I'm gonna drive the slides, but the man there who's got some nerdy wear is John, and he is going to do much of the talking. I'm going to go ahead and share.
But I agree that tag team. We're going to tag team. Can I? Oh, you can hear me. Great.
And can everyone see that? We're good.
Yeah. So you'll advance the slides, and everybody, please, you know, because it is a small group, you know, feel free to ask, shout out, whatever. We're going to get through this, but we've got a particular ask of you. But we're really excited to get this opportunity of getting you to help us in our cause. So why don't we go ahead and, so I'll just go beep. Can you hear me okay? Oh, yeah. All right, great. So I'm John, and this is my lovely wife, Diane. We represent a couple of different constituencies here, but as was mentioned, I am both with UVM and one of the co-founders of Generator. And so we were the ones that got this grant, and I think that'll be kind of cool news, and we'll talk about that. Doug Dickey is the Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering and Mathematical Science. I guess he's kind of one of my bosses. He's not with us today, but he is the state coordinator for the First Tech Challenge Robotics. I think Kim, how would you introduce yourself?
I think I did, but I'm here.
Okay. And Mike, Mike Cole is helping us, really, really fabulous helping us. He is a first year, last year was his first year as a FTC coach. He's associated with 4-H and has been just an incredible resource, which we appreciate. But the main thing is we're trying to make this a bigger tent, and we'll explain what we're trying to do, but you're all part of it. So do we want to do the intro thing?
Sure. So I would love, if you all are comfortable, I would love for you to have a chance to bring your voices to the room. So we are recording, and so if you're not comfortable doing that, that is perfectly fine. And we did a little bit of introductions in the chat. Those who arrived late might not have had a chance, but if you are comfortable, I will go ahead and call on you, and you can pass or go ahead and unmute and share who you are. So the first person that I see is Wisteria.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, my name's Wisteria. I'm from Wheelock, Vermont. I have the hiccups right now, so hoping to get through that, but yeah.
What's the name of the town, Wisteria?
I'm from Wheelock, Vermont.
Wheelock.
Right next to
St. Johnsbury
London.
Academy. That's great. We're
Yeah.
glad to have your school represented.
Yeah.
Thank you. And next I see Alex.
Hello. Can you hear me? Because I'm troubleshooting audio problems.
Yes.
Okay. Got you.
So, I am Alex Rutens. I am from Sunderland, Vermont.
Nice.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Where is Sunderland in the state?
It is in the southwestern corner.
Excellent.
Close to Manchester.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome. And then next I've got Miles.
Hello, my name is Miles, and I'm from Amherst, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. Amherst, Massachusetts?
Yeah, so John, we spoke a little bit.
Yes.
Awesome. That's deep southern Vermont. South Vermont. Welcome.
We do have some folks from outside of Vermont, but still
Nice. Thanks for joining.
awesome for them to join us. Yeah. So then I've got KLPF. I'll just give you a moment if you want to join us this way, but if not, that's okay too.
And Kale, you may have heard you can pass. You can just type in the chat if you pass. If not, you can unmute yourself and share where you're from. I know Kale's been coming to all my programs, and Kale's from Maryland.
Oh, cool.
And since I'm screen sharing, do I have everyone, Lauren? Did everyone get a chance?
I believe, let me just check. I believe that is all the teens we have on at the moment.
Okay, wonderful. So then we will move on. Thank you all for sharing your voices and being here with us.
Great.
All right, so what's this all about, John?
Well, we are, I'll just get to the punchline. We are helping build STEM skills here in the state of Vermont using something called FIRST Tech Challenge. And it's a really, really fun robotics program, which I'll tell you about. So first we'll tell you about FIRST in general. We'll talk about FIRST Tech Challenge, and then figuring out how we want to involve both, students like yourselves and try to leverage a community that would actually help us build this. And the reason for that is that we actually have a great opportunity. We got a large grant to help build out FIRST across the state. And it has a lot of bearing on, especially on our nearby states, because a lot of our competitions and co-opetitions involve people, particularly from Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'd like to have a conversation about how you might get involved, and then get some questions and answers. So I don't know how many of you know much about FIRST Robotics. I'm kind of curious if if you don't mind just writing in the chat anything you know about it. But let me just tell you, it's something I've known about for almost its entire existence. It actually is just hitting about its 30th anniversary. So FIRST was a robotics challenge that was invented by a guy named Dean Kamen, which is he's the most amazing, prolific inventor. He's probably like the Edison of our times. He got together with a professor called Woody Flowers, who taught for many, many years at MIT, where I went to school. Go MIT. And they came up with this idea of a robotics competition that would actually have elements of sports, and that you actually build teams, you do competition, but much more than that. It's not just all about the techie stuff, because you actually have to self-organize. You have to figure out how to raise money in some cases, though we can help with that in a great deal. But it also teaches meta skills like project management and what they call gracious professionalism. They started out building kind of an open-ended competition, but now it is in 3 different layers. The earliest one is called FIRST Lego League, and that's ages 4, begins even as young as 4 up through ages 16. And this is built on top of those programmable Mindstorms Lego units. And it's something that doesn't involve a lot of real detailed programming, but it's a real challenge. And there are about 33 teams in the state that actually are doing that right now. The middle one, which is the one we're concentrating on, is called FIRST Tech Challenge. And that's mostly, late middle school, but high school. So ages 12 through 18, grades 7 through 12. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then there are about 16 teams registered in the state of Vermont, and we're trying to help double that. The biggest from a biggest standpoint of robots is called FIRST Robotics Competition. That's a much more advanced and much more expensive thing. That's grades 9 through 12. And the state sometimes has between 2 and 3 of those. But the reason that we're actually, well, I'll tell you why we're concentrating on FIRST Tech Challenge in a bit, but I want to tell you a little bit about what the FIRST universe is like. This is not something new. As I said, it's almost 30 years old, but last year, just a couple of stats, there were 645,000 students in over 110 countries. And I've been to these world championships, and they are amazing. We'll see a little bit of that in a second. There are about 77,400 teams across those 3 different programs worldwide last year. And 89% of those kids go on to do some sort of STEM career. What's interesting is that not everyone who starts with FIRST kind of has a STEM in their mind, but a good deal, almost 90% of people, once they've gone through it, they like it so much that they choose STEM careers. And part of that is because there's so much encouragement. There's over $80 million in scholarships available to, at all of those different levels from over 200 different sources. Not only that, it's considered to be a major recruiting thing, to have this, to have been on a FIRST team or to perhaps be an ambassador. It's a huge thing. I recruit for MIT. I'm part of their education council. So anybody who from the state of Vermont wants to go to MIT has to have an interview from either me or one of my colleagues. And in the booklet that they teach us, train us how to do these interviews, they explicitly say that participation and passion for FIRST Robotics is a fantastic sign for someone who's applying to MIT, that they would be a good fit. That's a pretty powerful statement. So let's talk about FIRST Tech Challenge. The reason that we're choosing that is because that's at a place where it's a more sophisticated robotics challenge than the Lego stuff. You actually write code, you have to design your own electromechanical things, and it's just got a great deal of content to help you actually learn how to build really sophisticated robots. Let's look at FIRST Tech Challenge. So beep. So let's go ahead and play this video. This really captures what it's like. Everything but the smell.
Bear with me, because to make this work, I'm gonna have to jump out of this and go into YouTube. So give me 1 second. I'm just gonna stop my share.
Any questions, you can just yell.
Yeah, you guys at any time just raise your hand or type in the chat box if something pops up. And okay, Alex, why don't you unmute yourself?
How much, what exactly are we going to be doing? Is it like more software or more, right? So what I really want to know is what sorts of programming languages are we going to be using? Like C, Python?
So this is, they've recently changed over to an Android platform, so it'll be Java, but you can use, so you're actually writing real live Java. And there's great code, you can get, help wherever you want, Coursera, Khan Academy, etc. But the heavy lifting is now done in Android. Mike, do you want to?
I'm fine with Java. I was just hoping that we weren't using Python, because I don't really know Python all that well.
Oh, well, that's a good one. I tell you what, I work at MIT now, and everything I do is in Python. And I used to say it was the worst programming language ever used, ever written. And now I say it's the worst programming language that the entire whole world runs on right now. So, yes. So did you get it?
I'm queued up. So I'm gonna
do it.
Screen share.
Go.
FIRST Tech Challenge challenges kids ages 12 to 18 to program, design, build, and compete with robots.
Once you get the challenge, you figure out your game plan, you build a robot so that you can complete many challenges.
Teams use a reusable kit to program robots in a variety of coding languages.
Every year you also learn more about coding, so then your coding get better and better.
Personally, I do not learn hearing about it, but hands-on is just go into it instead of saying, oh, I don't know how to build this robot. I can say I built this robot.
In FIRST Tech Challenge, students are developing a broad range of skills.
Manufacturing, hardware, troubleshooting. But there's also a lot of things that you learn that you wouldn't necessarily think about people skills.
Problem-solving skills, helping one another, helping other teams.
The program draws so many students that come in who just want to do the marketing, who just want to do fundraising.
You need to do fundraising because you need to buy kits and parts and everything you need for the year.
That's a great thing that the kids learn very early on.
The model of FIRST has provided incredible opportunities for the students to interact with professionals.
Whenever I ask my mentors a question, they always flip the question around and ask, where would you find the answer to that question if I weren't here? They slowly built my confidence up so much more to the point where we weren't asking questions. We were just going.
Each team has to compete at a local event, win awards at the local event, and then they're able to move on to the first championship.
Walk to the room, there's that smell of robots.
Smell of robots.
There's different languages, different culture. It's just the best thing ever.
I think it's incredibly important for youth to see careers in science and engineering as a possibility for them.
High school participants have access to over $80 billion in scholarships from colleges, universities, and technical programs. FIRST Tech Challenge is one of 4 engaging FIRST programs.
First in one word, wow.
Fun!
First is inspiration.
First is amazing. First is hope.
Thank you, Kim. So we go back to our regularly scheduled program, already in progress.
All right.
Mike, you're going to post that link because I think that's a really good video. Or do you have the link? Because I have it.
I'm working at it. Hopefully here in just a sec.
Welcome to the First Tech Challenge Resource Video Pushbot Guide. The purpose of this video is to give a team using the Pushbot Guide a quick overview of the capabilities and versatility of the Pushbot robot.
Sorry, is that me?
Yes, I think it's just the next video.
Okay.
But it's a great example, Kim, because there's so many resources out there. You know, you would think like, hey, I don't know how to make one of these robots. I have like stopped sleeping over the last few weeks because I keep watching these guides about how to write the code, I actually have one of the robot kits. I just got it last week, and it's above here, and it's like covers the entire floor. It is so amazing. This isn't a video, right? Yeah.
So, but also, Alex has his hand up. I don't know if we want to take a moment for Alex.
I'm just wondering about that that thing that seems to mimic your voice. That, like the that thing.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm wondering how that works.
No one knows, actually. It's very mysterious. It's actually the same kind of electronics, the kind of stuff that you would learn building these robots. You know, you were asking about software. It's kind of the hardware. It's a embedded software. It's a small Arduino class machine, but it's the kind of stuff that you got to figure out. As a matter of fact, I was talking about building a robot. You know, I actually bought one of these kits. I'm building a face for it, so you might consider this some research. This was a code that I wrote for the front of a Jeep, and yeah, and this is open source. I can actually give you the code if you want.
Oh.
What, you know, on these first things is what's interesting about it is you're building up these skills, and but the challenge actually changes every year. So this year is something that the game is called Game Changers, and it is announced, it's going to be announced in September 12th, I believe. And on September 12th, everybody will get the same, at the same time, there'll be this webcast, and they'll talk about what the challenge is. And the challenge generally is a combination of, you know, you'll be your robot, which has to be a certain size, has to be like 18 by 18. It has to have certain kind of specific components, but then anything else goes. Anything else you want to add on. I don't think you can have flamethrowers or anything like that. But the challenge involves like moving bricks around and getting pieces by their color. There's even an AI autonomous challenge part of it that you can choose to go into or not. But the exciting thing is it's really like a sports season where it just comes up, everybody starting September 12th, once we've got a team going, then everybody goes, and then through a series of competitions, scrimmages, workshops, et cetera, you build up to a state championship, which would be, I believe it's in March. It's usually in February, but I think it's been moved out. Now, let's go ahead.
Well, then I want to add a little bit to that. So I think John kind of references similar to sports. And I don't know how many of you are on a sports team, or maybe you're part of a 4-H club or a Scouts club. But what First Tech Challenge is, and what First all of them are, is a community. So you're on a team, you're working with other youth who are your similarly aged or in your age range, similar interests, but also there could be kids on your team who aren't really interested in programming the robot, but they want to be a part of the team who's working on the presentation, or they want to be a part of the team who's working on the costume that we're all going to wear and look amazing when we show up as a group. Or they're going to be a part of the team that wants to work on kind of a business plan or the business side and do fundraising. And so all these different players are what's necessary to build this team. And that's what the Game Changer is.
Thank you.
And John hasn't seen this slide, so he's like, John wants to know now what too. So.
Now what? Now what, Kim? Yeah. Okay. So this is where we ask for your stuff. Why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So, and Doug, sorry, Doug's not here. Doug, feel free to chime in. John and Mike, feel free to chime in. But really what we brought you here today, and thank you for coming, is we are looking for ambassadors. We are looking for youth who are comfortable going out into their community or going back into school, and we don't know what back into school looks like, but going back to your friends or other kids that you know might be interested in this, maybe you're not friends yet, and really talking about FIRST and seeing what kind of interest you can help drum up in your world. We can also pass this back and forth. So it's not only youth, right? Because it's not just a bunch of you guys getting together and figuring this out on your own. You've got mentors, and we as a network are supporting you and your mentors in this process.
And what we would really appreciate from your help, so we would really like you to help us find those interested parties. They might be parents, they might be teachers, they might be 4-H club runners, but if you can help find those, that's important. But the real important thing is if you can actually talk among your friends, about your schoolmates, etc., to try to get them interested, because it only takes a couple of people at each team, and if you have an adult, then what we can actually provide, because we got this grant, we can help with a large part of the equipment. Usually you have to raise a lot of money. You still have to raise some money, but this year, because of this grant, if you can get enough people together, we can get you this equipment and the training and put you on your way. So we're going to have a bunch of these events. As I mentioned, the season starts in September 12th, and then we're going to have a series of workshops where we're going to get, chances are it's going to be, a mix of in-person, but probably, because of the pandemic, more remote. So we're going to have workshops on how you put things together. These will be tech talks. We're going to have some competitions, which will be, if possible, in person, where two or more teams get together and they actually try their robots on the actual challenge, which involves a playing game, a playing floor. This year, the challenges are actually being redone so that they can actually be done either remotely or in person, so that this would be a fantastic year to actually, build up those skills, form a team, and then, you compete potentially virtually this year, and then next year you're really, really well positioned, and you've got all the equipment, you've got the learning, all culminating in this Vermont State Championship, which is in March. And then if you win that, you actually get to go on to the nationals and then the internationals. And we would really appreciate if you could join our community. We have two different ways to join. If you're a student and you want to talk, to other people about it, you've got questions, et cetera. We've got one of the team members from Mike's team actually created a Discord channel, and you can actually look at that. You can log in there and you can actually talk to other people who are actually doing it. So you can, get ideas, et cetera. If you find somebody who's interested, you can kind of put them over there. And then if you've got an adult, you're welcome to join it too, but a lot of the adult organization part, in terms of the volunteers, is actually in the Slack channel, which I think we also have on this. Do we? No, Slack.
I took it off because we're talking to kiddos.
Okay. We also have them, right? Okay. And so what we're looking for is you to help us think through. We'd love your input on what would it be? What would a robotics program in your part of the state, or if you're from out of state, what would a robotics program look like if you were doing it remotely in terms of mentoring? Can you help us find mentors? Can you help us find interested students? And for that, we would be eternally grateful, but we've got swag and stuff like that. We'd even like to know from you what would be good, what would help generate interest, and what swag could we give people to actually get them interested. So we're really looking just for your interest and your input, and we would really love to make you part of our community.
So there's a question there, and I think Alex had his hand up. Alex, you want to ask your question?
I was just wondering if you could post the Discord, if you could post the Discord link in the chat, because we can't click on it when it's on the shared screen.
Sure thing, we'll do. We'll definitely do that. There's also a question on how many teens are on a typical team. Let me answer that one. So there's a range. You need to have more than one person. So you could have a team as small as 2 people, and you could have a team as large as 15 people. And you might think, wow, 2 people, that's probably not going to be a very good team. I bet they're probably going to lose. But you'd be surprised because the 2019 world champions were 2 people, a 2-person team. It's pretty amazing.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, I think that's like that in the business world too, is sometimes more isn't necessarily better.
So there was a question about if the mentors need to be techie. Well, it doesn't hurt, but it isn't necessary. And so the mentors could just be people that are there to facilitate the search for the answers. And sometimes the answer isn't in the group that we have with us. Sometimes the answer is outside of our group. So if you have a mentor who says, gosh, I'm not a techie person, but it seems like maybe you need to talk to someone who has skills and experience that in the mechanics or in the electricals or in the software programming. And those are in the techie space, but then it might be another type of question you come up with of maybe you do have a techie mentor, but your real question is, how do we fundraise to get the money we're going to need to do this activity? And the techie person doesn't know because they don't have any experience in that. And that might be where that type of mentor would say, gosh, maybe we need to find someone outside of our club that has experience raising money for activities like this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of our team leaders, mentors from last year was a history teacher. And he made that point. He said, you know, it didn't hurt that that he had more experience in things like fundraising and sort of project management. He said, don't only limit it to techies. It's a good point.
So there's a question about what's the time commitment for teams and how many hours per week. So that's really up to the team to decide. I think it's you know, as you get into it, you'll realize that the more time the team and its members put into this, the more you're going to have great results that you'll be excited about watching your robot as you've built it and programmed it. My team last year went through 3 generations of different robot designs over the 20-week season, which means that we on 2 occasions completely disassembled back down to the loose parts, everything that was our robot, and started over again. So that's a common approach to have to go through it, which means you're probably going to have a pretty good bit of time. I would say you should expect that you're going to probably spend more than a couple of hours each week over the 20-week season. And some teams go a lot more than just a couple of hours each week. But you should plan that it would be likely a couple of hours at least each week.
And I think my observation of the teams is, you know, it ramps up towards the end, but people are so into it that they just kind of lean into it, so that it's everybody I've ever talked to who's done it has had fun. It's mostly about fun. It's, yeah, you're building skills, but it's a really, really fun experience. And these are skills that might actually end up being your career later on.
John, it does seem like this is such a great opportunity for teens to not only learn the skills, but to have that community among their peers, to do something, you say, really fun. You had mentioned that the challenge this year could happen in person or virtual. Is it set up this year so that if you have a team of 15 and they don't have a place to socially distance 6 feet apart and can't actually get together in person, can they actually work on the challenge virtually?
We're working, you know, FIRST is coming out with new guidelines, and the way that we think it will be very adaptable to whatever the local needs are. So either you have a pod of students who are going, you know, half days or every other day, or you could even, you know, because a lot of it is software, you could actually pass the hardware around. And I think that what we're going to try to do through these communities, like the Discord channel and the Slack channel, is getting sort of best practices for people. And so we believe that there will be that. We're actually going back. We have a meeting tomorrow with the FIRST coordinators to figure out whether we can help with some, accommodations, like can we help people buy rain flies so that they can practice out, they can get together outdoors. So we're looking, as I think the whole world is actually becoming very flexible because of these constraints. But the whole intent is that we can use this year to actually get started and then build those skills. But the whole idea is to do it in a way that allows you to go on to subsequent years. We don't want to just do it for 1 year. We don't want to just do.
So if I heard you right, because you have this grant and because you're fully cognizant of the limitations of the pandemic, students can pick their teammates and there's money to help them make it work and the way the challenge is going to be. So nobody should be afraid to start this year. It's going to work.
Yeah, it's a great, kind of a nice ramp, a way that you can actually do this, build up your skills, compete this year, get something out of it. That would be fun, but really, really, really have a head start on the next couple of years. I think one of the other things that's interesting, Lauren, is that a lot of the coaching, which is always done, has traditionally been done in person. We're all gearing up to be able to do this coaching, the mentoring, for somebody who needs, I need Java skills. Alex needs some help with his Java, or somebody needs electromechanical, or somebody needs fundraising. Now, that we would be able to bring in that help from wherever, Maryland, Massachusetts. So the idea is that you don't necessarily have to be in person. I think the whole world is adjusting to that too. So kind of a cool new frontier. But just as you say, this is a really good year to get started because the grant, it probably won't cover 100% of your costs, but several $1,000s worth of gear, or about almost $2,000 worth of gear that we can get for any registered team, but it's for this year. So that's why it's really important to start, because that gear will last for several years.
Well, I know a couple of these teens on the call today, so I'm hoping that they're gonna do this. So I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a question for Kimberly, but how do they go about becoming an ambassador? Do they just raise their hand, or do they have to complete an application?
That is a great question, Lauren. At this point, this is all moving very, very quickly. So we don't have an application yet. At this point, it's a raise your hand, and we'll work through that together. I think that we're having a lot of one-on-one conversations, we being John, me, Mike, with potential ambassadors, with potential mentors, because everything is on the table and ever evolving. So if there is interest, I think it first starts with a hand raise. And then
so for the teens that are on the call today, I know you all have my email address since you get emails from me. You can just let me know, and if this is something you want to do, and I'll forward it on to Kimberly. Or you can also just put it in the chat. But if you're not ready to say that yet, you can think about it and just let me know, and I'll share your interest. Or Kimberly just put her contact in the chat. More direct line. So I see in the chat that Alex had asked a question about wondering if you could use another JVM language, for example, Scala or Clojure instead.
Okay, yeah, so let me try to help here. So there's 2 or 3 different ways that FIRST resources allow the code to be created. One of them is using something that you may be familiar with. It's called blocks. It's a lot like Sketch, which is a graphical drag and drop programming environment. Another one is one that's kind of built into the robot, and it's called OnBot Java, which is not a fairly great name, but it's what they call it. And then the third one would be doing direct Java coding in something like Android Studio programming environment. As far as other derivative languages, those really won't work. You'll need to be able to directly code in Java in order to use the libraries and the other, basically the target compile path that's going to get the code onto the robot.
Great. So, oh, go ahead, Alex.
Thanks. I was just wondering because Scala actually. I've used Scala before, and it actually can talk to the JVM. It can use all Java libraries. So I was just
Yeah. So I actually think mechanically it would work, Mike. The question is there a restriction, or as long as it talks to as long as you get the code in there and run it on that platform, is there any restriction?
I think the only restriction you should think about would be your team. Would be if an individual is coding in something, let's say like Scala or Clojure or something else that's not a widely known tool, then that individual that's coding in it, it'll be a little bit tougher for them to collaborate with their teammates. So in some ways, you may want to think about the best tool versus the broadest, most widely used tool, and that'll be a choice that you can make.
Okay.
I'm curious about that, so I'm gonna look into some of the mechanics of that. That'd be interesting. But I think, Mike, the real consideration there is probably not technical; it's more people.
Right.
Awesome.
So I'm wondering, John, Kimberly, Mike, if you guys have anything else that you want to tell the teens on today about this program. To me, it sounds like a fantastic opportunity to just build your skills and have some fun and just be part of this awesome community. Wisteria, Alex, Miles, I'm going to ask if you guys have any final questions. But if not, I think you all on the robotics team side, the adults, have made a really good case for why teens should become ambassadors to this program.
Yeah,
so if I don't hear anything.
Thanks for having us, Lauren.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for sharing this opportunity. And we'll keep promoting it, trying to get more teens aware of this opportunity and hopefully bring them into FIRST Robotics. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I do see Wisteria does have a question. Can you pass the idea to another school? Because my school already has a team. For sure, Wisteria. Part of this is just getting the word out. So if you have friends in other parts of the state, definitely just let them know about this opportunity and to get in touch with Kimberly.
I think too, oops, sorry, John. A lot of times folks think about this from a school perspective because that's where a teacher might come in as a mentor, or there may be classroom space to use for a build. But there are a few teams in the state, Mike's team is one of them, that is not associated with a school, but it's a 4-H club. And so that is a whole other avenue that teens could pursue, is becoming under the umbrella, if you will, of 4-H instead of relying necessarily on school commitment.
Yeah, and Miles is asking, what are the changes for people out of state? And I don't know if Miles, do you want to unmute yourself and further clarify your question?
Yeah.
Just like anything in the presentation that was said, would there be anything that was different for people who aren't in the state of Vermont?
The only thing I would say is our grant is only for Vermont teams, but you're from Amherst, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We always invite neighbor state teams, or not even just neighbor states, but we often have neighbor state teams into our competitions. I think one thing we could do is we could help connect you to the FIRST coordinators down where you are. Anything that we do in terms of content and stuff, you're certainly welcome to. But there are lots of teams, as Mike said, that there are lots of teams in the Amherst area. Would you like a connection? We can definitely connect you with. Diane also made a point before, is I don't think that there's any restriction, just like Kim says that, it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with a school, but I don't think there's any regulation that said a large school, for example, couldn't have multiple teams. And there have been some places that have had teams for a particular interest. There are women's teams, there are New American teams, anything like that. So it's just because your school has a team doesn't mean that it doesn't have an opportunity to grow another one. As a matter of fact, one in Montpelier, the capital we have a school that's so many kids want to do it that they're actually cloning a second team. Yeah, and if you're in driving distance, Alex, you say you have a kid, you have a friend in Hoosick Falls. Is that close enough to the border that she or he could participate? That's the home of Grandma Moses. Happen to know.
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes. If they wish to join a 4-H club that's here in Bennington County and to participate on a FTC team here, we'd be delighted to have them. There are also teams in New York, but I really think the Vermont teams are better. I don't know why. I guess I'm a little biased. But we would welcome them coming and joining us here in Vermont and participating in all the excitement of building and programming robots. It's fantastic.
Yes, you'll have to learn to speak Vermont.
I love that you guys came in with these last minute questions because they were really good questions. So if you think of anything later on, you all have Kimberly's email that was put into the chat. You also can email me and I'll forward it. Late minute question, is there any restriction related to age? Alex's friend is 18.
Yeah, 18 is the age out range for this program. So it's really a fantastic program for students between grades 7 and 12. And then for students as they go beyond that, if they're starting to look at their other opportunities, hopefully they're looking at different university programs or continuing ed programs where there's programming and mechatronics or mechanics or robotic operation, robotic maintenance, robotic systems. There's a lot of them. And if you'd like to follow up with any of us, you can, in fact, feel free to go through Lauren and she can contact me and I can get you connected to opportunities for, as you go beyond high school, going into robotics.
And I would say quickly that there may be an opportunity for that friend who is 18, maybe next year or maybe this year, but they could become a youth leader or a youth mentor. They're in kind of that in-between age where they could bridge the gap. So they couldn't compete, but they could certainly be part of the team in a leadership role.
Great answer.
Yeah. Well, this sounds fantastic. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming today. And let's get some FIRST Robotics teams going. Go team.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the invite. Everybody, hope to see you in our events. So thanks very much.
Thanks for joining and thanks, Lauren, for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you guys.